That fly crawling up your window isn't lost. It isn't sick, and if your instinct right now is to grab something flat and end it, stop. Because that fly is almost certainly not the one you think it is. Most people treat all flies the same. Dirty, disease-carrying, a problem to be solved. But there are over 17,000 species of flies in North America alone, and the one on your window glass right now belongs to a completely different category than the one that landed on your food last summer. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what it's doing there, what it's actually telling you about your home, and why killing it costs you something you didn't know you had. It starts with a question almost nobody thinks to ask. Why does everyone hate flies? The standard answer is germs, and that part isn't wrong. The common housefly, Musca domestica, can carry over 100 different bacterial and viral pathogens on its body. It lands on waste, it lands on food, and yes, the transfer can happen. That reputation is earned. But here's what gets left out of that story every time. The housefly isn't particularly interested in your window. It's interested in food, warmth, and reproduction. It's a fly of kitchens and garbage cans and compost bins. It is almost never the species you're watching crawl up the glass in the corner of your living room on a cold afternoon. The fly on your window belongs to a different family, and that changes the entire picture. The most common fly you'll find at a window, especially in late summer through early spring, is the cluster fly. Scientific name, Pollination rudis. It looks like a housefly if you don't look closely. Similar shape, similar size, maybe slightly thicker, a little slower. Golden hairs on its thorax, though you'd need a magnifying glass to actually see them. Cluster flies don't breed in filth. They don't lay eggs in your food. Their larvae develop inside earthworms, the ones living quietly in your garden. And when the adult fly emerges, its entire goal for the cold months is to find somewhere warm and sheltered, which increasingly means the wall cavities and attic spaces of your home. On a warm autumn afternoon, or when late winter sun starts warming the south side of the building, they wake up, and they do one thing. They move toward light, which means they end up on your windows. The fly you've been killing your whole life for being dirty was never dirty. It was just confused by the glass and looking for a way out. That's the first irony. The second one is stranger. Flies are ectothermic, cold-blooded, which means they can't generate their own heat. They depend entirely on outside sources to stay warm enough to function. A south-facing window in winter is, from a fly's perspective, something close to a heat lamp, a surface that radiates warmth without requiring any effort to find or fight for. This behavior is called phygmothermy, warming through contact with a warm surface. That slow, slightly dazed crawl up the glass isn't confusion, it's deliberate. The fly is thermoregulating, trying to get warm enough to fly, to digest, to survive the next few hours. When a fly gets cold, it can barely function. Its muscles contract poorly. Its reaction time drops to almost nothing. That's why the flies you find on windows in winter seem so easy to catch. They're not stupid, they're cold. And here's the thing. A fly sitting on your window in January is not eating, not breeding, not searching for filth. It is doing the one thing it needs to do to stay alive, which, if you think about it, is exactly what you do when you sit in a patch of sunlight on a cold morning and just stay there for a minute. Something to sit with, maybe.
Here's the part nobody covers when they talk about flies. Flies are the second most important group of pollinators on the planet, second only to bees, and in certain ecosystems they've overtaken that ranking entirely. In Arctic and alpine environments, where bees either can't survive or are scarce to matter, flies are essentially the only pollinators functioning. The cacao plant, the one chocolate comes from, is pollinated almost entirely by tiny flies called midges. Remove those flies and cacao farming collapses. Roughly 100,000 fly species worldwide visit flowers regularly. Many orchid species have evolved to attract specific flies and will not reproduce through any other vector. The metallic green and blue blowflies you sometimes see on your windowsill, the ones that look almost too shiny to be real, pollinate plants that smell like rotting flesh, plants that evolved specifically to attract flies rather than bees. If the fly disappears, those plants disappear with it. And then there's decomposition. A blowfly can detect the chemical signature of death from over a mile away. The larvae that hatch from her eggs can reduce an animal carcass to clean bone in a matter of days under the right conditions. Without that process, dead matter accumulates, nutrients stay locked, disease spreads. The fly is doing unglamorous work that the whole system depends on. You only see the window part. The rest happens somewhere you're not looking. This is the part most people never hear. Blowflies were the first forensic tool in recorded history. A 13th century Chinese text describes a murder investigator directing suspects to lay their farming tools on the ground and watching to see which tool flies landed on first, drawn by traces of blood invisible to the eye. That technique worked. Today, forensic entomologists use blowfly egg-laying patterns and larval development timelines to calculate time of death in criminal investigations with greater precision than most other methods available. Defense attorneys and prosecutors both hire them. It holds up in court. And then there's this. Lucilia sericata, the common green bottle blowfly. You've seen it, the one with the iridescent green abdomen, is used in hospitals, deliberately. In a treatment called maggot debridement therapy, sterile blowfly larvae are applied directly to infected wounds. They consume only dead and necrotic tissue, leaving healthy tissue untouched, and their saliva produces compounds with measurable antibacterial properties. It is FDA cleared. It is used when antibiotics fail. The fly you are about to crush has a medical counterpart that saves limbs that would otherwise be amputated. That's the moment in this story where the whole thing shifts. The creature that's been living in your walls, fogging up your window, being swatted without a second thought, turns out it has a resume most people never bother to read. There's one more thing that fly on your window is doing, and it has nothing to do with light or warmth. It is giving you information. Cluster flies appearing inside your home means there are gaps somewhere in your soffits, your roofline, your window frames that the flies found before you did. A cluster fly infestation is not a sign of an unclean home. It is a sign of a home that has openings and something in the building envelope that needs attention. Blowflies indoors in winter are a different signal, and a more specific one. A blowfly active inside your home in January or February is unusual enough to pay attention to. Blowflies breed in decaying organic matter. When they show up inside in the off-season, it sometimes means there's a dead rodent in a wall cavity, or a leak encouraging the kind of decay they're drawn to, something decomposing somewhere you haven't found yet. The fly is not the problem. The fly is the notification. Other household creatures work exactly the same way, showing up as signals before the actual issue surfaces. If you want to know which ones and when they're most likely to appear in your home, the seasonal bug calendar is free and linked in the description. It maps out what's active month by month so you're not caught off guard. Tonight, when the lights are off and you catch something moving on the glass, a small shape, slow, making its way upward towards nothing it can reach, you'll know what it is now. A cold creature doing the only thing it knows how to do. Not a threat, not a symbol of something wrong, just something else living in the margins of your home, on the boundary between inside and out, trying to stay warm. You might still not want it there, that's fair, but the next time you reach for something to swat with, you'll hesitate, just for a second, and that second is the whole point. If you want to know what else is sharing your walls, your ceiling, your corners, more than you've noticed, there's more here when you're ready.